I hereby call this regular meeting of the Danbury Board of Education to order. All those in attendance, please rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Public participation, and asks that speakers please limit their comments to 3 minutes. Speakers may offer objective comments to school operations and programs that concern them. The board will not permit any expression of personal complaints or defamatory comments about Board of Education personnel or students, or against any person connected with the Danbury Public School System. Is there anyone in the first row that wishes to address the board this evening? Please remember to use the sign-in sheet. Is the sign-in sheet there?
Good evening. I'm Melissa Gabriel and I teach kindergarten at Moore Street School. I was here last year towards the end of the year speaking on behalf of the kindergarten paraeducators and discussed how I thought that it wasn't a great idea to cut them and still feeling that way. I just entered my 7th year teaching kindergarten and I've never not had a paraeducator, and I have to say that the last 13 days of teaching have been the hardest of my career so far. You have to remember that many of them are 4 years old, so they don't know how to cut, they don't know how to write their name, they don't know where to go for the bathroom, they don't know what the nurse is, they can't tie their shoe, they don't know where the Kleenex is. And I have to stop and take away a lot of time from teaching to do those things. They don't get my one-to-one or small group instruction like I'd like to get to, because I have to do a lot of testing while also having a learning environment going. So it's a lot of work, and one of my students said to me 2 weeks ago, or actually she announced it to the entire class, she noticed that I was having a hard time. All the students needed help all at the same time. They were all tapping me, they were all saying my name, and finally I just said, I cannot help you all at the same time. And she says to the class, and she said it just in the simplest terms, she said, Mrs. Gabriel is not an octopus. And I said, you're right, I'm going to take you to the board with me. I said, you're absolutely right, that's exactly what it comes down to. We hear a lot now about the CMTs, and Moore Street School did pretty well on their CMTs this year, but we need to remember that learning didn't just start in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. We need to remember that it starts a lot earlier than that, and we need to make sure that we give them all the resources possible so that they can, as early as kindergarten, so that they can also achieve that success.
Thank you, Mrs. Gabriel, for taking the time to come and address us this evening. Anyone else in the first row wish to address the board this evening? Second row.
Hi, my name is Kimber Windus. I'm a parent of King Street Primary. I spent 10 years in the Navy as an officer and a naval aviator, and as an educator, I taught AP economics. So I have experience making tough decisions, and I also understand the idea of scarce resources. That said, economics is still about making choices, and when it comes to allocating scarce resources, how can we get the most out of those resources? I believe that the large first-grade class at KSP ignores the best use of our resources. I provided information for you in the form of a packet that I would like you to look at as I go along regarding the importance of class size in terms of educational outcomes, and believe it or not, saves the Danbury school system money in the long run. The benefits of smaller class sizes are pretty much irrefutable. The Institute of Educational Science, the research arm of the U.S. Department of Education concludes that class size reduction is only one of 4 evidence-based reforms that have been proven to increase student achievement through rigorous randomized experiments. Studies from Tennessee, which is one that I included in this packet, and elsewhere demonstrate that students who are assigned to smart classes in grades K through 3rd do better in every grade that we measure. They have score higher on tests, they receive better grades, and exhibit improved attendance, and there's less retention at higher grades. Those students whose performance improves the most are those who are most in need of help. Children who form minority groups who experience twice the gains as the average student. And given the population of Danbury, that's important to note. Reducing the class size in early grades shrinks the achievement gap by about 38% by some estimates. The benefits of class size reduction in early grades last throughout a student's educational career. By 8th grade, they are still almost a full year ahead of their peers. By the way, these gains have been seen with as little as 1 year of small class size at elementary level. In high school, students who have had smaller class sizes in early grades have significantly lower dropout rates, higher grades, and receive better scores on college entrance exams. To continue on, why first grade? A lot of elementary grades are suffering. If you look at the star results here, you'll see that clearly the one that I circled here, that's first grade, shows the best results from a lower class size. And when you look at what they consider a small class size, 15 to 18 students, a regular is 22 to 24. Let me first introduce you right now to the numbers of Kingstree Primary are 25 across the board. Facts from the enrollment report as of 9/17/2010. First grade class sizes in January ranged from 14.3 to 25 students per class. The mean first grade class size is 20.1. The median first grade class size is 20.3, which means 6 schools have an average class size below and 6 have above. KSB has the highest class size, average of 25 students per class, which is 20% higher than both the average and median class sizes of all the other schools in the area.
Mrs.
Even if
Witness,
it-
your time's expired. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the second row that wishes to address the board this evening? Third row? Fourth row?
Hi, my name is Sandy Stipend, and I have a daughter who's a sophomore in the honors program at Danbury High School. And last year at numerous Board of Ed meetings, Principal Rossi promised improvement of Danbury High School under his direction. Yet this is the first time in our experience and many other parents' experience that the children have no textbooks. The new DHS has neglected to provide textbooks for all the children for the 2010-2011 school year, particularly for honor classes, neglecting those students who raise the average test scores, which is a key reason why these changes have been implemented. After working hard and having earned their honors class positions, they have no textbooks because Dr. Rossi has expanded the number of honors classes without thinking to take inventory or ordering additional textbooks prior to the start of this school year. When concerned parents raised it at the last PTO meeting, he acted a bit surprised and unaware of the situation. He did actually say that the AP classes had textbooks, and that's because you entered into an agreement with Project Opening Doors. Apparently not, you haven't entered into an agreement with the Danbury citizens or their children. Now there's a question of funding for the honor students of the new DHS and providing textbooks. Since Dr. Rossi assumed his position.
Point of order. Point of order. What's the point of order? That's out of order. Your comments are out of order.
If they don't have textbooks,
The board will not permit any expression of personal complaint or defamatory comments about Board of Education personnel. That comment is out of order.
what I came here to find out is the 4th week of school. My daughter has no math book, she has no chemistry book. The chemistry teacher is not providing reading of chapters. How are these kids supposed to do their schoolwork? It's ridiculous, it's criminal. Hers is not the only class, and some classes do have textbooks while others do not. So the math teacher at open house suggested that he thought that they were thinking about getting them online. Not everybody has a computer. Not everybody has, high-speed internet. Not everybody has a computer for every child in their home. And when we asked if we have a textbook, he said he had no idea. So I'm asking the board, what are you going to do about it? No textbooks. It's ridiculous.
Thank you very much for coming. Anyone else wish to address the board this evening?
everybody through talking. And, but in this case, I need to address something that I think is wrong. The Board of Education, my understanding, is quasi-government. And there's a reason why that is, because you're elected by people, like me. And it's done because you don't want politicians in city government interfering with decisions being made on behalf of kids. I feel that the decision that was done by the city council was wrong, and also, in my opinion, illegal. We elect you to make decisions for the kids. I elect you guys to make decisions for salary increases, cutting teachers, hiring teachers, things of that nature. I didn't vote for the city council to make decisions like that. Especially a city council that is not here in the Board of Education, does not know all the details, all the working parts of the Board of Education, all the decisions you have to make day after day. So, to make a long story short, if I feel that the salary increases that you've given to cabinet members are wrong, I'll vote you out. That's my right. It's not, I didn't give the city council responsibility or the right to do something like that. Therefore, I don't think it was a wise move to just take off the table the option of just seeing legal action or just getting an opinion from somebody in regards to salary increases that you guys have felt it was in the best interest of certain members of the cabinet. The city council didn't have any problem with you hiring new teachers. The city council don't have a problem with other things that you've done. They had a problem with this particular instance. And I feel that when there's an ad hoc committee being done by the city council, the Board of Education would at least invited or attended that meeting. We shouldn't have the mayor of the city of Danbury speaking on behalf of the Board of Education. There's a separation of powers issue here. Now, I'm not saying that I agree with the salary increases, of course not. But what I'm saying is, I agree with the separation of powers. It's not about a money issue, it's about the separation of powers issue. And you're setting a bad precedent when you allow the city council to do something like this. The city council could have just said, well, we're just going to take $35,000 out of next year's budget because of what you did. They could have done that. But what they did, and the rationale behind what they did, from Corporation Council opinion and comments in regards to that, it's just wrong. It was just off base, and Councilman Side was correct in stating that. I do think you should take serious consideration about the separation of powers. It's not about money. It's about the separation of powers. And take that seriously because you're setting a bad precedent for other municipalities and Board of Educations throughout the state. Because if it happens here in Danbury, it's going to start to happen in other places across the state. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson.
I'm unfamiliar with how it works. Did you have to sign in ahead of time to
Please,
speak or when you speak?
You can speak, you can sign in before or after you can sign in before or after you please.
All right, can I? My name is Lisa McCarthy. I am a parent of a King Street first grader. I did notice there's a job posting for anticipated part-time or full-time teacher. I'm assuming that's the whole first grade discussion that's going on. Obviously, smaller class sizes are better for everyone. My main concern is the question of is it part-time, is it full-time? And if it is part-time, that means 20 kids will have 2 teachers, while the other 80 would have just 1 teacher. And by pulling those kids out for their core materials is a great idea, but I think it extremely limits the teacher's flexibility in saying it's not working right now for whatever reason, we need to come back to it. Well, you can't come back to it if 5 of the kids were missing, and then you go back to it in the afternoon. Those 5 were with another teacher doing it a different way, and that aspect of the should it be part-time, should it be full-time, should we add anyone, very much concerns me, especially if my child were to need one pulled out or one who's in, just the details and the logistics of it. So my hope is that as it's looked into, all those pieces are really, really looked at and really questioned and make sure that what we're doing is best for everyone involved. And, you know, I know budget constraints and time constraints and all that is important, but I think you also have to think of the 100 kids who will be affected, whether they're pulled out or whether they remain in the classroom. It will be a big change for everyone.
Thank you, Mrs. McCarthy. Any further public participation this evening?
Good evening. There are a few parents here, and actually, in regard to the KSP situation with the first grade and the overpopulation, if you want to call it that. And I just wanted to read something that I wrote right before coming, because I just felt very strongly, I felt very strongly that this is something that needs to be communicated. We've heard from Mrs. Witness with regard to the numbers. We've heard from Mrs. McCarthy with regard to the actual teaching and the concerns that we have and the lack of continuity that might be a concern for the children. So I think that with that, I wanted to add an emotional piece because I'm very good at the emotional piece. And I just wanted to read this if I could. And that is that we come to you this evening seeking, and I hate using this term, but I feel that we are seeking equality in KSP in comparison to the other schools, and especially for our first graders. We can all agree that there are a few points that we can't argue about. First of all, Danbury Public Schools has seen a dramatic increase in registration and have received a hit with the economy as it stands at the moment. Second of all, first grade is a critical year to establish a strong foundation for reading, writing, and arithmetic, among other basic skills. And third, when you review the solid numbers that were kindly furnished by Dr. Glass's office on Monday, as Mrs. Willis already mentioned, we are seeing the inequity of a 20% difference with KSP's numbers. Now, along with that, I want to say that, just simply put, we appreciate both what Dr. Pascarell and Dr. Glass have already put on the table, and I'm sure that we will discuss later in the meeting with regard to a part-time teacher. But we consider this as parents, I think, and I hope I speak for all the parents, an interim solution. However, we're looking for the ultimate solution, which would be, or the final solution, which would be a full-time teacher for our students. There are 100 students, and the inequity exists. It exists with the numbers of 100, and especially in comparison to the other elementary schools in the first grade. I think that we have to stress how, the additional first grades, the first graders ultimately deserve the education that all the other students are receiving within Danbury Public Schools. And with the numbers as they exist, that is impossible. And even, as Mrs. McCarthy already mentioned, there are 1,000,001 questions that are being raised, even with the part-time situation. So we respectfully request a full-time teacher or an additional full-time teacher for our students. And we hope that you take this into consideration when you discuss the part-time position. And as we mentioned, we did see a listing already for tentatively part-time / full-time position. And we hope that you seriously consider the full-time situation for our students, because again, ultimately they deserve the same education that every other child is receiving within Danbury Public Schools. Thank you.
Thank you for participating this evening. Anyone else? Seeing none, public participation is now closed. We'll move on to the consent.
Here, a lot of it has been a response to Race to the Top, trying to place Connecticut in a position to receive funds from the federal government. Because as you know, Connecticut was not recognized as the second time to receive funds. However, what it did do, I think, in a somewhat positive way, the state legislature had to pass some laws in order to be in a position to be considered. So with those laws passed, even though we didn't receive the funding, there are things that we're going to have to do that's going to change the way we do business and the way we educate the children in Connecticut. Some real differences coming up. We're going to focus on some improvement segment. I talked to you last time a little bit about the magnet school and charter school, that we're moving in that direction. We have already here in Danbury have redone the graduation requirements, so that's, as you know, that's part of the requirements here. But I think you're going to start listening to and hearing the parent trigger bill. And that simply means that certain things have to happen and certain events would happen when those circumstances occur in the district. We are partially there because of the improvement factors that we have in some of our schools with AYP not being met. And that area we want to speak to you about because it may impact us. It is impacting us already, but greater in the years that come up, depending on what happens to our assessment this year. So, Bill, do you want to go through that for us?
Good evening, everybody. Okay, just a second. This is Public Act 10-111 from the most recent session of General Assembly. And as Sal said, we made the most significant changes to the education legislation. So this will be 100% review of everything that went on. These are the main items that we really think are critically important for the board and others to hear. I won't spend too much time on this because the board had a lengthy session. The good news is we are ahead of the curve on this. You'll notice that the graduating class of 2018, it talks about upping the mark from 20 to 25. In our vernacular, it goes from 105 to 125. I know the board has looked at this extensively in subcommittee, and we had presentations by Dr. Rossi and others. And so those are the areas in which, those are the primary areas that have driven this change. And just for everyone's information in the audience, the STEM areas are science, technology, engineering, and math. So not to spend any time on this other than to say to the board that you've really done your due diligence on this. Online coursework and advanced placement. The new law allows that some courses may be taken online. The issue here, though, is that they want to make sure that the board has a policy that provides credits that are granted, number one, and two, that it has the same degree of rigor that a typical classroom course would have. It also requires high schools to offer AP courses, and again, we are far down the road. Through Project Opening Doors, was referenced tonight, I believe we doubled or more than doubled the enrollment through the open enrollment process. So the bottom line with this again, we're in good shape with the AP. We're still in the developmental stages with online courses. We have the credit recovery program, but the real issue is making sure that we have rigor built into any kind of online experience that we have in a classroom. This one's a little bit lengthier. The idea the board has been required to have adequate student support and remedial services in grade 7 and up beginning with 2018. Again, we've done a lot to front load this. In addition to our advisee programs, we have the recovery programs, we have the reading and math lab model that we've had in place, we have teaming, so on and so forth. Second bullet provides an alternative pathway for students to satisfy graduation requirements. This can be a little bit confusing. If you look at the bullet underneath it, it talks about offering such initiatives as put the word traditional in there, summer school. Why would they be referencing summer school? We've been doing that for years. Because many other school systems did not offer summer school, and that's why we have external students signing up and taking part in Danbury summer school opportunities. Again, the idea of offering online learning opportunities. Next bullet number 4 allows for students to enroll in a recognized college or university. We do have some students who are at the other end of the spectrum. We've made arrangements with higher education through Dr. Schmatter and before him Dr. Roach, presidents of WestCon. Our students can receive a full scholarship if they meet the criteria to go and take college level courses without cost when they're still a high school student. There are very, very few students over years that would actually apply. This would apply to, and those are youngsters who, for example, have taken every math course that we offer, and they're just becoming juniors, so they need something beyond that. Allows for an alternative form of exam for students who fail. This should be a given end-of-year exam. I apologize for the typo. These end-of-year exams are currently in the conceptual stage of the State Department of Ed. The state is supposed to create these end-of-year exams, and we're still in exploratory phase with this. We've gone to a number of meetings, and we've gotten very limited feedback on this because it has yet to be developed. But in the event that a student does not pass that end-of-year exam, then the state is saying we should have some kind of alternate form that will allow a student to demonstrate his or her understanding of the material and actually the degree of mastery that will allow them to get credit for that. The last bullet is always the qualifier, and some financial support may be available from the state pending available appropriations. That really speaks for itself. Employment of teachers. The first bullet is the one that is raising eyebrows everywhere. This is a national initiative, not just a state initiative. New Haven, Connecticut was way out in front on this and is now being deemed a national model. They worked with the AFT. The AFT sent their second in command into New Haven to work through this because of the potentially volatile nature of this. What I'm referring to specifically is the idea of multiple indicators of student academic growth. And the concept that has been put in front of the educational community for many years is that should we incorporate a component in our teacher evaluation process that talks about the actual efficacy of teacher performance, meaning if I look back over 5 years of my performance and I'm a teacher, should I see some degree of growth over time in my students? If I see regression in those kids, is that cause for concern? We already do this in many ways. Our teacher evaluation program that was put forward in 2001 was deemed a state model. It's time to be refreshed a little bit. But this is definitely going to be something that we'll have to sit and review with multiple stakeholders. Last time we did our teacher evaluation plan, we actually did it in NEA Danbury headquarters. It's probably going to be the same type of partnership. I know that the unions are concerned, the same thing goes for the administrators union. We want to make sure we do this right because last time we did it, it was very, very amicable, and the results were that we were identified as a state model. Expands the opportunity for districts to reemploy retired teachers, and this is from TR, the Teacher Retirement Board. Teachers who are collecting pensions from the teacher retirement system, very stringent guidelines. It eliminates the reference to temporary employment. It clarifies the limitations of reemployment. What does that mean? We now can employ somebody up to 2 years at 45% of max salary. Expands the retired teachers that are employed by a priority school district. We are a priority school district. We receive priority school district grant funds. That special rules that apply to shortage areas will also apply for districts such as ours. Thinking behind that, not necessarily applicable that much to Danbury, but in some of the larger urban centers such as Bridgeport and Hartford, it's very hard to get teachers, and typically they run under their requisite amount. This will allow them to have another opportunity to retire teachers in, and those folks can be considered to have the same set of rules as that durational shortage area permit DSAPs they've heard of. The idea of fast track tenure, the last bullet. Tenure is 4 consecutive months. Typical translation, 4 years of employment. Fast track is 20 months versus the 40 if the teacher has already been tenured in another school system in Connecticut. So if we have a tenured teacher from Brookfield who moves to Danbury, they're tenured in Danbury after 20 months. This law, 10-111, now modifies that again to 10 months if the teacher is employed in a priority school district, again, such as Danbury. I've lost track, we haven't looked at it in the past couple of months. There are about 15 to 17 priority districts, which translates primarily into the poorest districts in Connecticut, and therefore they're deemed as a priority district. That 10 months of the teacher is employed by Danbury, other priority districts, even if that teacher has not been employed by a board of ed in the past 5 years, or even in Connecticut, that becomes significant. It makes Mrs. Thompson's life a little bit easier as well. Charter schools, and we're hearing more and more about this, and we'll be talking to the board about this, charter schools, innovation schools, etc. Requires the State Board of Ed to waive enrollment limits for a charter school that has been determined to have a demonstrated record of achievement. I'll give you an example. The Amistad Academy in New Haven has a remarkable record of doing wonderful kids. There was a cap on the number of kids that could apply and be accepted into that program. This waives that enrollment limit. The reason that this is noteworthy for us as we move down the road exploring charter schools, innovation schools, magnet schools, etc. We want to make sure we keep the board apprised very early on of some of the modifications to the law. Eliminates the requirement that when the State Board of Ed issues charters for state and local schools, and there are two different types of state charter school and local charter school, it does so only within available appropriations. That is yet to be determined in terms of what it actually means. And both Sal and I have been working with different folks at the State Department of Ed, and we're getting some relatively stable information, but at times it's a little bit wobbly. So we're looking at what that actually means. But the obvious translation is the economic conditions will have a big impact on what the state is able to provide. Makes permanent the charter school facility grant program, which wasn't permanent before. It was scheduled to end at the end of the 2008-2009 school year. So now this facilities grant is in perpetuity at this point in time. And then lastly, expands the opportunity for teachers to teach in a charter school to participate in a teacher retirement system, which was always a disincentive, this analysis, we treat you equally. I know I'm going very quickly because there's a lot of legislation we want to touch on, and over time, we'll definitely bring this back to the board. Innovation schools are the schools that we're very interested in, and being a school needing improvement, as you know, Moore Street was the first school in this part of Connecticut to be identified, the first school to be unidentified as the school that won the Lone Pine Award for most improved school in Fairfield County. As of July 1, this allows our school district to enter into an agreement with the teacher and administrator unions to convert an existing school into an innovation school, or if we'd like to create a new school and deem it an innovation school. This is very similar. Remember, Sal and I went up to Boston a number of years ago with folks from WestCon to look at something called the private schools. And these were schools, the thinking behind Boston was we were afraid we were going to lose schools to charter schools. The unions were feeling the same way. So the board and unions collaborated and said, what if we find a way to relax the regs? Those things that we have to require, policy statements, we will adhere to those. With any kind of practices that we can modify, we'll take those into consideration. In fact, they did. Innovation schools followed that same logic. An innovation plan developed by the faculty and district leadership or external partners. So we have two options. One, we can turn it over to somebody from the outside, which obviously we don't think is necessarily the best approach. External partners do not always have the best track records. Internally developed models seem to have the greatest degree of efficacy and efficiency because basically the school folks know best when it comes to their idiosyncratic needs and natures of their community. What does that mean? It provides greater degrees of autonomy and flexibility where teaching and learning around the idea of curriculum, how the school looks at its budget, how the school is scheduled, including the school day, the school year, adherence to district policies and procedures, meaning where can we relax those, how do we offer professional development, if there's strict language in the contract, might we look at that a little differently, what are our policies and procedures around staffing, and possible waivers from modifications to collective bargaining agreements. Obviously, that would be a partnership endeavor with our unions, but the idea now of legitimizing the concept of the innovation school is now satisfaction. And the superintendent must evaluate any school as being an innovation school and through a particular set protocol. This next item we share with you, but it does not apply to Danbury. Effective July 1, governance councils are to be established for the schools that are required to undergo a specific form of corrective action. The reason we share this is because Ellsworth is now in its third year of identification. They made substantial growth this year, but the AYP targets were not met in some subgroups, and consequently they fell into corrective action. What does that mumbo jumbo mean? It means that there's increased partnering on the part of central administration with the building, leadership, and the staff. It's the same model that we use with Moore Street as that school worked to turn itself around. And as you know, they were very successful in their efforts. We are not in the form of corrective action, which requires significant degrees of failure. Really, elsewhere does not match any of that. If they did, we have to create this governance council that has a lot of external stakeholders. These folks have extensive say in terms of budget, in terms of how staff members are hired and dispersed, etc., distributed rather. We do not believe that this will ever be something that will touch the other. We can do hear about governance councils with corrective action. It is something now that is in legislation. One thing that is really working against all of our schools is that the adequately performance targets, the AYP, percentage adequately progress rather, the performance targets are very high this year, 89 and 91 respectively. What that means is that regardless of how well we've done in the past, we still have to raise the bar. We have, as I said, we've had remarkably good success. I heard Melissa when she spoke, Melissa Santa Gabriel, that Moore Street has made good progress. You all know that Rogers Park is now off the list because of the progress they made. Broadview made very good. So many of our schools made good progress, but it's getting increasingly more difficult as the ceiling continues to go up to eventually 100%. As always, our mantra is that we keep the board as well apprised of all the legislation as really critical as we possibly can, and of course we comply and adhere to the spirit of the legislation. What we get paid to do is make sense of this, including times when we have unfunded or underfunded mandates now we have to back into the council. Last couple of pieces, beginning the year 2010-11, this school year, a new piece went in. You heard Sal mention the trigger bill that deals with governance councils and also deals with keeping parents more involved. What this says is that we have to have opportunities for 2 parent-teacher conferences a year. We currently do 1 formal conference. The opportunity talks about flexible parent-teacher conferences. Many school systems, we did an informal poll a couple weeks ago. Many school systems are saying they're interpreting this to be, we'll have our 1 formal conference, and then any parent that wishes a second conference, typically in the spring, just let us know. We'll make a point of scheduling the conference. That's exactly what we're going to do as well, and we'll be publicizing this very well. As it knows, we currently have 1 formal conference, and at a usually convenient time, parents say, I'd like to have another touch base with you. We definitely will. And obviously, anytime a parent wants to come in and talk about their child's progress, we go through a schedule that will allow for that. School discipline and in-school suspensions is, of course, a very significant issue for us a while back. It continues to require the school year that suspensions are in school, and we make good provisions and very good progress with this, unless the administration determines through a hearing that the student, and this is critical, the student is a danger to persons or property, or that the student will cause a disruption to the educational process. It's very similar to the expulsion law. And it further refines the law by allowing out-of-school suspensions if the administration goes through a certain protocol. Such suspension is appropriate based upon, 1, the student's previous disciplinary problems that have led to suspensions or expulsions. As we look at this and say, there's a clear pattern, this youngster is having severe problems and may actually be a threat or danger to other persons or property in the school or to himself or herself. And 2, efforts by the administration to address that youngster's disciplinary problems through means other than out-of-school suspension or expulsion, including positive behavioral supports, strategies, the PBS piece. They really have worked. We've tried basically pulling all stops out. We're still having difficulties. As we're working to continue to try and address the youngster's needs, we do have reasonable cause to say we're going to go with out-of-school suspension. The statute now allows us to do that. And that's it. Does anyone have any?
Does anyone have any questions for Dr. Glass or Dr. Pasquarello on what we just saw? I just have no questions. There was a lot in there about allowing charter schools in certain scenarios, and we did see something in our last board meeting about charter schools. But given the severe budget constraints we're on, where we're short materials and class sizes are increasing, you know, what is the district's ability to take advantage of these new laws pertaining to charter schools?
testing. You know, that was in the details. We've been trying to find that out. The best scenario we're able to gather from consensus that both governor gubernatorial candidates are endorsing the charter school concept in interviews that they have had. So the thinking there is that something's going to happen with charter schools. We don't know what that something is. We know that they were sunset with enrollment in numbers 18 total and enrollment sunsets. When the new administration takes hold, we decide the aisle, we think they'll move forward with a charter school. And I kept saying, well, what does that mean? Well, right now, what it means is if there's a state charter school that's run by a local organization, they'll receive the current law anyway, around $9,000 per student for that effort. If there's a school-based charter school such as ours, if we were to do it, there's a planning grant of $100,000 a year that can assist us for the first 2 years. There's an annual reimbursement for tuition of our students up to $335 a student. So depending on the number of students you have, if it's 500, you know, around $50,000 there per year to help run the school. But that's it. We're thinking to have a charter school application in simply because the Dr. Galuski and Dr. Glass are running that committee, and we think the enrollment tendencies would indicate that we're going to need something for the middle school, something for the elementary school, and we are looking at the secondary school and high school as well. And we're trying to put Denver in a position to receive whatever funding we can in order to go forward for the sidewalk. So from the charter school point of view, the advantage it gives us is that we can select 100% of students. A magnet school, conversely, is, and we have a magnet school currently, as you know, in Western National School. The reimbursement there is about per student $3,000 for Danbury, and for a contributing student from another district, $6,700 currently. Well, if the board decides to expand that model in their conversation, for example, if we went to a K-8, you know that West Hartford area, because of the Horton case, desegregation, they've received most of the finances. There's an element in the state legislature that's trying to move some of those resources in this direction. If that's true, and the board puts themselves in a position of creating a K-8, then potentially you could have a building, which is part of the law currently, and also all of the money that we're talking about, except that you don't have 100% arcades, you have 60%. So, and we've had pros and cons about having magnet schools and having to tax the rest, but it puts us in a position to try to get some resources that we just don't have. For bricks and mortar and for hospital staff. So that's what we're looking at.
Thank you. Any further decision now?
Dr. Pasquale, on the charter school, if it runs 60-40 split, some
No, magnet school. The charter's 100% ours.
But 100%.
Yeah, only our students.
With the charter there, is it essentially the financial remuneration from the state that will be given to us, but does the curriculum follow what we're doing in our current schools? Does it follow the same in a specific charter school?
If it's our charter school run by the board, you determine the curriculum. If it's a charter school that's run by the state, it's an application process from a non-Board of Ed entity, then the state does. They manage that program. We do not. They're permitted to go around the Board of Education, right to the State Board of Education
So,
for an application.
assuming it's our school, we select a specific school, then you could tweak that particular curriculum to suit that school's needs. And it could vary differently. It could vary from the current curriculum generally established in those schools. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
it generally does. That's correct.
Any further comment? Mrs. Cook?
Just trying to get the clarification on the charter school. Either the charter school belongs to us, right?
they're telling us, and we don't know, is that if the board goes that way and they fund it, currently is at least 3 years of funding for $100,000 a year. And this is all made, this is made.
Okay.
And after 3 years, that stops. And that money cannot go to bricks and mortars. It has to go to equipment and so forth. Every year that you run the program, they'll reimburse you $335 per student. So the $335 is in perpetuity. $300,000 will only be for the first 2 years. Is what's on the books right now. That may change, we don't know.
I won't get into the budget, but let's hope it is.
Yeah.
My other thing is we had in our last board meeting, and I heard it again tonight, making the magnet school K through 8. And I thought that in several magnet school meetings, when the state came down, there was a very clear discussion or direction as to how we have to handle that. If we went to K through 8, that school would not belong to being there. It would have to be on another site. Wasn't that meeting?
If I may clarify, the discussion, at that time, this was a year or two ago when I was on the Magnet School Committee, the meeting that was held between the various districts, I think the outcome of that was that they would rather not, the partner districts had no intention of using that building, or wanting to use that building for a K to 8. The only alternative would have been finding another site, not necessarily in Danbury, it could have been any of the partner towns for a completely new school. But I thought the idea of a K to 8 there was not supported by that group. That's my recollection.
And you would have to get that kind of support in order to do it. So without it, it doesn't work.
I believe that was 2 years ago.
Yes.
That's when we were having problems filling. I recall.
I think the year we discussed it, it was in the middle of being staffed up, but I think the 5th grade wasn't there yet, so there were some empty classrooms at the time, and the decision was made then not to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to our next item. School Utilization Committee, Dr. Zaluski and Dr. Glass. Give the floor to Dr. Zaluski.
Good evening. Just this is more an informational item, in terms of the plans that we have for the building utilization committee start meeting tomorrow night here at the Brook. Just to refresh the board's memory, last year when we had the original utilization committee, the original charge was to look at the buildings in terms of what we could or should do when Head Start had moved there. It was an anticipated renovation of the old town of Lutheran. As you're aware, that plan has kind of changed. Head Start, the building was not ready. Then as we moved through the late spring, the focus also started to involve looking at possibilities of saving dollars and utilization of buildings in terms of the financial decisions that the board had to make to reduce our budget last year. All of that work culminated in the board reconfiguring the King Street and Mill Ridge campuses. During that time, we mentioned to the board that that was phase 1 of a 2-phase operation. Phase 2 would be to start to look at the long-range implications of building utilization and looking at school boundaries. The committee, which is to begin tomorrow, consists of teacher representatives, principals, central office administrators, parents, and we invited the mayor's office to attend, as well as Mr. Maloney, who represents Head Start. So that first meeting tomorrow will commence. Our plan is to meet probably every 2 weeks to formulate a blueprint for presentation to the board sometime during the month of November. This is our plan. Obviously, it's not going to be a fine-tuned document in terms of changing street A to your school. That's not the intention of this committee. This committee is to look at educational implications, where we go as a district, what is the best way to utilize our buildings. Do we want to look at other kinds of schools within the district, for example, other kinds of theme schools or focus schools? What would be the focus, for example, of the third middle school that we're looking at opening in 2 years. So the committee would be wrestling with those issues. So Dr. Glass will be co-chairing that meeting with me. He will be taking care of more of the educational programmatic, questions, and I will be dealing with more of the nuts and bolts operational pieces in terms of what's physically possible, within our school district, and once again, to get a comprehensive plan to bring back to the budget for discussion before we go into the fine-tuned detail work, which will of necessity come at a later date once we have this vision established for the next, I guess we're talking 3 to 5 years in terms of a time frame. Where do we want to use the school district 3 to 5 years now? So that's basically the charge of the committee. What will we represent on the committee? The same 2 board members who were on the first utilization committee, Mr. Tabasak and Mrs. Cooper. You also, be on this committee as we develop this vision. Dr. Glass, would you like to read anything to that, please?
Sorry, this is Hislop about King Street situation, so I apologize. The only piece that I'd like to share, and you know about, so I'm sure it was very thorough, is that when we looked at the 2020 committee, the mayor was specific that he really wanted to look at programming as one of the key drivers for this. And as Mrs. Cooper just said, one of the ideas might be to look at the idea of expanding the International Studies Magnet School. We've got some good feedback from the state. Newtown is just putting in a magnet school intra-district, their own magnet school for STEM programs. So there may be opportunities like that with something like our magnet school. We've also been looking at things around the idea of performing arts magnet, because there seems to be interest in the community. There are enough youngsters that will come forward. And the other options are looking at, Bobby already covered this, but the idea of that space study that was done with the substantial increase that's predicted for the middle schools. In talking to middle school principals, they're saying we really need to move hundreds of kids out of here over a reasonable period of time, multiple years, if we're to maintain the environment that's conducive for teaching and learning. So that, I'm sure, will be a major area of study.
Are there any questions on this topic, Mr. Chair?
Well, a couple of years ago, we were sort of glad to hear that the Head Start program in partnering with or obtaining the Emmanuel Lutheran School could conceivably out of our schools by, I think it was the year 2011 or whatever it is. But that hasn't come and has not come to fruition. In some of the meetings that I've attended recently, it appears that Head Start has no place to go. There's nothing on the drawing board right now for the Emmanuel Lutheran School to be a facility as we know it as is. So, I mean, optimistically, you think there's nothing going to be done for the next 5 years. We've got 18 or 22 classrooms, I think, in Mill Ridge of Head Start children. How does that formulate as to what you're going to do? Secondly is, what do we do to get this project moving ahead? I mean, the Head Start people are as frustrated as we are. Space is the issue. And what kind of pressure do we do, or what kind of joint project, or basically a joint project do we do with the city, with Head Start, and with the Board of Ed to get things moving in that direction so we can get something done on the Head Start program?
Well, in terms of your second question, Mr. Janelli, I think the approach that Dr. Pasquarella has taken with Mr. Maloney is that we want to work cooperatively with Head Start in terms of, where those children will be located. We're concerned, we're involved, because obviously those children will be coming to the neighborhood schools when they become of kindergarten age. We've been frustrated also because it's really stymied our planning in terms of space availability. But last year, when we were going to be moving the Head Start classes and the preschool special education classes to the former Millbridge Intermediate School, we did tell Mrs. Maloney very clearly that at that point, our expectation was a 2-year time frame. And it was at that point, based on the demographic documentation that was developed for the initial utilization committee, we were simply going to be out of space. We looked at the K-12 community, not even the preschool section of Head Start. We have a major crisis in terms of the number of children coming into the middle schools, along with coming down the road. So we were very, very blunt and very clear in terms of that our plans for the former Millbridge building was a 2-year projection. I know that Dr. Pasquarella has invited Mr. Maloney to come to a cabinet meeting next Tuesday to discuss these very issues and other issues that we have relative to the current utilization of the school with the grid. And I'm hoping that when we have that meeting next Tuesday, we might be able to get more information in terms of what the real prognosis is. Mr. Maloney has been in touch with the Niagara Code too, and also has expressed his concern about where will space be available for Head Start because of the difficulties that they encountered in the renovation of the old Emmanuel Lutheran school. So there are still some pieces that we don't know the answer to yet, and that is making the planning process very difficult from our end. And as I see it, we're not going to be able to do this in isolation of Head Start or the city. The city is going to have to come to the table and be a player in this whole process. Because without Danbury is one of the few cities in Connecticut where the population is projected to continue to grow, unlike other communities. And the whole issue of building a new school is very problematical because of the cost involved, particularly in terms of the current economic climate. So it's not an issue alone for Head Start, it's not an issue alone for Danbury Public Schools. The city of Danbury has to play a pivotal role in assisting. One of the outcomes may be, rent space from some of the private / parochial schools, if that's not a possibility we're going to look at. Dr. Pasquarella had last year explored such possibilities with officials from the Diocese of Bridgeport to see what may be available down the road, just so we can cover all of our bases as alternatives to building a new school. But it does make it difficult. The uncertainty of what Head Start is going to eventually do with the Foster Street location is a big piece of the puzzle.
Mr. Scarza.
We had this meeting at my assessing facilities where Mr. Maloney was there. And the biggest problem is the city. These buildings aren't schools buildings, they're city buildings. And we're going to need that space where it is. Sal said that we have over 200 more children this year, and Jack will probably have more. I don't know what our commitment is to Head Start, but they've already got, what I understand, $8 or $10 million to build the building. It's not, and from what I understand, that Lutheran school is coming down. I have never heard anything that Lutheran school is going to be torn down. I've heard nothing other than that. At least 2 or 3 times over that. So we have to get, this is a city problem, it's not a board, it's not really a board problem, and a Head Start problem. If the city doesn't get moving, it takes up to 3 to 4 years to get these permits and everything going. And you've been around Bob as long as I have, probably longer. And it does take a long time to get these buildings up. They have the money. This is a good atmosphere to build buildings because of the economy and the interest rates are low. And we must, and Mr. Maloney, get to work with the city. Not put pressure on them, Mr. Maloney. Work with them. You're not going to put pressure on anybody there. They're going to do what they want. But they explain the situation, certainly hope that they come to the table and do something before we Head Start doesn't have any place to go. I mean, our children have to be around.
Well, just if I may just follow up on Mr. Scasaba's comment, the problem is, as you know, you're correct, to build a new building takes several years. But the problem is our middle school population, will still make it probably next year with some minor tweaking. The year after that, Dr. Pasquale has already had many conversations with middle school principals. We're going to be in dire straits. So if if the Head Start group does not have a new facility ready by that point, we probably are going to have some alternative site other than our current school buildings to house students until such point as Head Start, would be able to go to their own new building. And that's where the superintendent's conversations with the diocesan officials, they, proved to be helpful. And, it's a big worry. And perhaps, with Dr. Glass on the committee, to look at other kinds of educational enterprises in terms of a magnet school or a theme school, having that school located outside of one of our current buildings may draw down some of the population and buy us on a little bit of time. But at some point eventually, Head Start must have their own facility, because there is no way, the demographer was correct, that our K-12 population will fit into our current schools. It's not going to happen as long as this current.
Mr. Chairman.
One of my faults is that I'm impatient. And unfortunately, I haven't learned yet, and I get frustrated in dealing with politics with the Board of Ed. But things take a long time. I use the word put pressure, maybe is a bad word to use. We are in this together. The maneuvering that the Board of Ed and Mr. Maloney's office is doing is something that will alleviate, supposedly, will conceivably alleviate our problem. We are not going to evict the Head Start kids, because of the 2-year commitment we have. Point I want to make across is it was my understanding at this meeting that Joe had mentioned, which I attended, was there was a sum of about $8 or $10 million that was already committed to this particular project. And what I'm looking for is cooperation, is between Mr. Maloney's office, the Board of Ed, representatives, Dr. Sal, yourself, Dr. Glass, and the mayor's office to get this on the agenda, to get this on the calendar, to start thinking about what they're going to do. I mean, it was our understanding during this meeting that Joe is referring to, that there wasn't even at this point here any blueprints. So it's kind of hard Joe had mentioned the thought process is to demolish the building. Well, that's great. You know how long it takes somebody to draft and do some blueprints. So when I say 3 to 5 years on a conservative basis, I think I'm within a ballpark on that. What we have to do is to have a partnership or relationship with the city to make them aware that this is an emergency situation.
Well, I think Mr. Ginelli might be responding, and that's the superintendent's intention by having a report back to the board in November in terms of that direction, where we'll go, how we will get there, who will be brought to the table to help us get there. Because you're right, time is kind of against us, in this case, realistically, and we have to be proactive and have a plan, even though it is going to take a few years for that kind of building work to be done. We still have to have a plan in place, because every September, those school buses roll in and the young children will be on the buses. And we have to have a school in place to educate the children. And I think that, I'm just assuming that part of the work of this committee that Dr. and I last time we were working with will be to include those pieces on how do we include all the players in this discussion, so that when we do have a plan, it makes sense. And no part of this operation of the Danbury schools can start, well, Steve Danbury is isolated. Everybody buys into it, and we go forward together to make it happen.
Thank you.
Well, I just want to say that I think the city, Board of Ed, and Head Start, and I identified 2 agencies that I know that Dr. Pasquale on the city, on the board side has taken information from us concerning Head Start. And we talked about this several months ago about Head Start. We needed those class rooms. And whether you like to use the word pressure or what, I don't care. When we put the pressure on to get the job done. We have been going around in circles for close to 5 years about Head Start. And then when the article came out in the paper I think it was a month or so ago, talking about the new Head Start class. The article is very clear. The Head Start's gonna be in that space anywhere from, close to 3 to so years, and I saved the article, but I didn't bring it tonight. So, I don't know what's going on. And, I don't know whether the conversation is with Mr. Maloney or what. But I think at some point, who's ever in charge, and that's Mr. Maloney, leave it that way, has to make a decision. Well, even if he rents a particular space until the new place is built, and do what he needs to do to open up those classrooms to us. You just can't keep moving from one time to the other. And I know I'm not saying the wrong way, but anyway, we need those classrooms. So, and I hope the conversation gets put to him that, you just keep, get a platinum rights. Let's get this done. But those children are going to be coming to us in our classrooms, and we can't put them out, okay?
I have a question. This is kind of a follow-up. What is the thinking, or has there been any thinking as to the impact on our operating budget should the space open up tomorrow? Which, again, we've been coming back 2-3 years. We're not offering the same services we did a year ago, 2 or 3. And we're talking about setting up a whole new building. Apart from who constructs it, how long it takes, do we have 20 classrooms that are open today? Where are we going to find money to staff the classrooms, supply them, etc.? If that's not being taken into consideration, this whole exercise is moot. You can go through a whole year's worth of meetings and say, this is what we're going to do with space. And when the space gets freed up, you can't afford to hire one person to put in there. So how is that being considered at all or not?
Well, it is. The problem at hand is that you have potentially a very dangerous situation at the middle schools with an infrastructure that is unsafe for the number of students that are there. If the prediction of 1,400 students comes to fruition, I mean, it's really problematic. So given that we think we need space, and this is not new. I remember I took this job, I was interviewed and said, do you believe in a third school? Everybody was convinced then, and the numbers just confirmed it. What we're thinking about doing, I said to you before, I think what we have to do is take advantage of what the state could give us to do that. That's why we're putting the charter school together. That's why we're thinking of magnet school. Because I don't have the confidence this economy is getting any better in 2 years when we're to that point. How do we staff it? I mean, what if we get the charter school? And what if they give you 100,000 a year? You take the 100,000 a year, you take 500 students in there, that's 150,000, that's 200, what if $1 million? You pay for the principal for that, you pay for the secretary, and you buy supplies. That's the best shot I have right now. I think that the council can't ignore the fact that these kids are growing. Now, if you can do what other communities have done, you can go to a staggered start. Everybody see, I understand that. It is frightening to think about. It's frightening for me to think about. You got kids and parents are working, staggered starts, and this is unfortunately almost like, let's do away with sports when we're doing a budget, then we get money. Let's go to staggered starts so we get a building. I think if we start now, Mr. Maloney's on this committee, the chief of staff for the mayor's on this committee, with the idea of saying we need a spot, and when we open up that spot, we're going to have to run that. Now, some of it, think about it, is we're going to be able to take students, teachers from the 2 middle schools in order to facilitate, because those students will go there. You can't do one-for-one, you're going to have issues with specials and what have you, but some of the staffing needs will not be there. So, so we'll have to do a build on how much it would cost us, depending on how many students can go there, how many we can take from the current middle schools, and then what is it going to cost to operate that, and a whole new set of busing. I mean, that's the other part. So it's, $750,000 probably wouldn't be unrealistic, because when we looked at, the middle school, when we looked at Mill Ridge, about what the turnaround was about $700,000. It might be in that range. Open it up. So we have to consider that also.
I think that should be part of it.
Oh, yeah.
If the state charter formula of 100,000 and 300 kids, any indicator that there is no funding model, because that's just not enough. Right.
Which means that you may have to go to magnet school now. But then when you go there, you're going to have 6% of your kids, not 100%, which is helpful. So, all I'm saying is that I think you're right, Gladys, everybody needs to come together and think about how we can help our kids, because, you know, they are our kids, and we need to do what's right.
Mr. Janela.
There are pros and cons to both. Hopefully, it'll be thought out in deliberation how a resolution comes. But I'd like to ask Joe, since this is under the purview of your committee, would you just keep the board abreast on a monthly basis as to the progress of that we're making?
Yes, and I will tell you this, I won't use the word pressure, but I certainly will try to, work with the city, because they're the ones, this is all in control of them. You know, that's how, we talk, and we know our problems, Mr. Kelly, and we're all, I can't see anybody here that doesn't agree with, we have a problem, but it's a city thing, we have to get it across to them, one way or the other, that something's got to be done, they got the city, they got $10 million, that's what I see here, they consider, and then do something, let's do something, and go back to, our chairman's thing, we don't have any money to stay on these things, we don't have any money. It's an unfortunate thing, we don't have control of our purse strings. We're given a certain amount of money, and it's not enough for us to make our ends meet. With all, young lady over there said there's no books, another one said we need teachers. There's no money, but we're gonna do that's going to be a prayer to get.
But you'll keep us abreast.
And we will get rest every single month.
Thank you.
Any further comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Pascarelli, you have the floor.
Yeah, along those lines, we began meeting with the city to economize some of our functions for efficiencies and savings, so that we can have more resources for the things that we want to do. So we started that Monday. If you look at my goals, one of them is, Elio's going to work on doing a lot of that work with purchasing. We're already doing stuff, but we want to look to do more. We're looking to share some other areas. We had a very good meeting on Monday where we came up with some ideas, and we'll be working together in that fashion. And we talked about the very things we just spoke about, just so you know, that this has been put forward to the mayor, and an understanding of the challenges that we have, spatialization and resource department. So that message is you should know we're carrying it. So I'll keep you informed as we develop those meetings. So the other thing is staffing and enrollment. This is, we're talking about here about opening a school and trying to figure out, there's a lot of research out there that says nothing makes the biggest impact on student achievement except going back to the smallest particle, and that is the classroom. That is the place where the rubber meets the road. You heard this budget, I said last year, is dangerously put together because you utilized all of the money for faculty and bodies, all of us, versus materials. I said that once, I said that a number of times. And it gives us the opportunities for some unbelievable challenges this year. And you're hearing now this perfect storm. I did meet with parents about class size, and I'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about the textbooks at the high school as well. You have a transportation problem. You may recall, you cut a bus, and they didn't know if they can do it. Well, I can tell you, from the phone calls that I'm getting and what I'm seeing, I don't know if that's going to be able to work. Now, we may have to just say to folks, you know what, you're going to have to be on for an hour and 3 to a seat, and it's just going to have to be that way. And if it's safe, it's just going to have to go. I don't like that, but will that be enough before I have to come back and say, I need another bus? I don't know. Supplies at the high school. I think that's, in a way, it was a shock. It was embarrassing, quite frankly, all of us, that happens. But I will tell you that many of the levels that were being taught at the high school, I'll have to say it's publicly, in some respects, that there's some wonderful programs that were going on in high school, but they're very much in silos. And one of the things I said to you 2 years ago when we did a little bit of a reform, I was trying to coalesce the power and the management back into the principalship versus having it dispersed into all the other directions. That was one of the things that we did with the organization, which is bringing things much more centralized. There was an understanding that many of these courses weren't using textbooks. They were using packets and other materials. Textbooks are no longer the curriculum. We have a curriculum to follow, and many teachers have been using what we call class sets, and they've been using other resources. But there are courses that clearly ought to have a textbook in the youngsters' hands, and they're not there. As of today, as of this afternoon, we've got the numbers. Tomorrow we'll be doing some more. We're just going to have to do that. So I think, just the resources will have to be made available, maybe out of those Obama monies that we had that we'll justifiably can use it for, but we're going to have to do that. But one of the things that Dr. Glass is going to have to do is to make sure that the materials that we do have is something we're going to utilize over time, not something we're going to just not use for the upcoming year. So we'll be doing that tomorrow. Is that correct? On the textbooks. So, and I asked that question how we get here when I called Dr. Rossi, and really was one, as you know, we had new leadership at high school, and those books they're just not there. Now, they've gone into closets. We had 72 people retired 2 years ago. There are a lot of materials around that school, and it sounds, horrible, but, we had to go and look at closets and do an accounting and doing all of that stuff. So we have it now, and we have a better idea of what we're going to have to do. So, shame on us that happened, no question. So we need to move forward and get the stuff for the kids. However, just know that we're not going to there are teachers not utilizing textbooks. They use it as a resource, and they'll have classes. But in other cases, we're going to have to buy one for every child. The tune to what I'm thinking about is between $45,000 and $65,000. I'm waiting for more information on mathematics. 7 years ago, I guess the city gave the board $500,000 for textbooks. Is that correct? $500,000. Yeah, you may recall you were in the same place because there were budgets when we had 2-0 a few years ago. We didn't buy textbooks. That's what got cut out, and that's what got cut out again this upcoming year. So we're going to have to make do with what we have and try to purchase those books even though we're challenged. That's the problem with the textbooks. With the staffing, I think I mentioned last time that first grade was still a challenge, and it still is. The research here is very clear about class sizes. There's no argument for us there. First grade is exceptionally crucial because of the kids are learning how to read and they do need that support. So we have been considering the possibility of adding it. What I don't know is that can we afford to add a full-time teacher? And let me play this out. I think one of my jobs is to figure out how to utilize resources. So what I said to Bill is there's a model out there that's the most popular model because it has some inherent problems with it, is instead of hiring full-time teachers, you hire part-time teachers. You take the core areas, they teach the core areas, and the youngsters return to the mainstream teachers to reduce cost. That's really the reason. Is it the best? No. But it's something I think I need to study to see if in fact it's something that we should think about doing because there are other schools that may need some teachers as well. As you know, we did bank half of the money that the $1.2 million, hopefully to pay for the 7 teachers that we hired 2 weeks ago because we were short and our enrollments had gone up. We may have to hire another teacher. They may come out, we're going to have to do it if this core thing doesn't work, this part-time teacher.
The existing vendor to provide this
Yes.
for every kid?
Yes, we went through a competitive bid process
Okay,
as part of the total healthcare package.
thank you.
About kindergarten, we thought there was going to be the need for another kindergarten, but what happened, the enrollment went down in kindergarten, so we didn't need the extra. And you may recall third grade there went down as well, where we transferred a teacher. The opening for first grade was low at the time, but it has risen to where every school in the district that has that similar number of 100, 101 has 5 sections. They are the only ones before. So that's why I said to you 2 weeks ago, we're going to have to look at first grade and seriously consider what we need to do there. I was just looking for an alternative way. So we'll be coming back to you for a recommendation at the next meeting about that. We have it posted as anticipated, depending on what we decide to do either way. So that's what that's about. I don't know, maybe you can update the board on transportation. I know you were meeting with John Spang, if you did that yet or not.
We have a plan meeting for Friday this week. It's gathered, looks like statistics since the beginning of the opening of the school, since the opening of the school year. Given afternoon, say approximately 3 p.m., all 97 of our vehicles are on the road.
97.
97 vehicles are on the road at 3 p.m. in the afternoon. Further compounded by athletic events and field trips that are requested day trips early in the school year. We're experiencing delayed pickup times and delayed arrivals of students back to their homes. I would like to see if, from a logistics standpoint, we can continue to fine tune the pickup schedules and drop offs and the routes as well before we explore an option, or perhaps the last option, which would be to restore the bus that was removed from the current year budget a few months back.
What line items have opportunities for which you can fund this extra bus, should we need to do that?
That remains insurance. It's too early in the fiscal year that I can provide some as to possible or possible transfer within accounts. I would advise you at the time, should the only option or available option have back Leslie, I'll go through all the data, all the information, come with best case estimates on some of our reserve accounts, perhaps workers' compensation account. Part of last year's fiscal year, I made a sizable contribution to the workers' compensation and strict commercial gas on it. Monday of this week, I met with my counterpart in the city, and our contribution in the span of now 3 or 4 years appears to be sufficient for the current year as well too. So perhaps on the areas of workers' comp reserves, again, decided to provide some relief.
Mr. Jerry?
Seems to be sort of robbing Peter to pay Paul, so to say, with no disrespect to you, Dr. Pasquarello. The $1.2 million that we got, thought, I mean, we had talked about it, thought we agreed that half would be used this year, half would be used next year, but that one half next year, 600,000, is going to be offset by a loss of funding from the Obama money, correct? A million or $2 million.
That's correct.
Yeah.
This is the third time the district has received a possible $1.2 million appropriation. We had the initial stimulus dollars, the ERA funds, 1.2 or 2-year period. And you're absolutely correct. At the end of this fiscal year, we'll be faced with a funding cliff. And that funding cliff amounts to approximately $600,000 of burden to next year's general fund. Of the recently approved or released ERA funds, which are the jobs first funds, teachers funds, that amounts to approximately $1.3 million. And we would use approximately half of the allocation to address this year's $600,000.
Thank you. Excuse me.
We're going to call a 2-minute recess.
Just for clarity's sake, I'd like to just mention something. Obviously, whatever decision you make with the books, that's going to be quick. The buses we're examining, I will come to you with a recommendation at the next meeting for the staffing so that we can hire that teacher. So I just want to make sure it's okay with you. But I hope you don't consider these come on as an action item and then come back or an information action. So next we can put on as an action. Is that acceptable? I just want to make sure I'm on this. Okay. So that's good. Thank you. Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Pasquarello. Information items. We'll start with information item B, voluntary employee life insurance. Mr. Moore.
Thank you. One of the benefits the district offers to the majority of its employees comes in the form of employee life insurance benefit, and it varies by group membership. Some employees are contracted, or part of their contract includes includes coverage on the low side of $10,000 of base life insurance. Other groups carry multiples of their annual salary. I took an opportunity over here over the past month or so to work with our current vendor, Sun Life Insurance Company, to perhaps find a way to offer all eligible employees. Eligible employees are those that are full-time employees by definition, 30 hours or more per week, and are currently covered by the Board of Education for base life insurance. So for all eligible employees, an opportunity to allow employees to purchase additional life insurance at group rate costs at no cost to the taxpayer, no cost to the Board of Education. As an example, the contracted rates that I've negotiated with Sun Life include benefits of $200,000 guaranteed insurance. This means without filling a survey, without questionnaires to your current health status, all eligible employees could receive or would receive $200,000 worth of coverage in addition to their base coverage from the Board of Education. Now, it is age band dependent. It is a very low cost solution to our employees. I'll take an age band 40 to 44 years of age, $200,000 of supplemental life insurance coverage, equates to approximately $14 per month. So employees are getting approximately $200,000 of coverage above and beyond the board's coverage. No questions asked, you're guaranteed that $200,000 for an annual rate of $160, $170 on it. The plan will offer, or does offer, a maximum of $500,000 or 5 times your annual salary, whichever is less. We've also negotiated a portability option outside of employment termination or retirement from favorite public schools. Participating employee can purchase or convert, I should say, this group life insurance policy to a whole life insurance policy, or carry the policy with them to their new employer with the replacement employment. So I discussed this at cabinet level. I presented it to Pasquarella. There's no monetary cost to the Board of Education. There is minimal administrative costs, record keeping and bookkeeping. I would like to see such a program offered to our employees. I do not have any concerns or issues with assuming the administrative functions, which are very minor and at most probably will occur on a quarterly basis, simplified accounting. All payments will not flow through our funds. All payments will be direct payments out of the employee's payroll deductions direct to Sun Life Insurance Company. I want to present you some of the material facts this evening. Should you have other questions either this evening or within the next week or so, if the board is in agreement that we can offer an extra level of coverage for employees at no cost, then I would like to have a discussion with our membership.
Mr. Jefferson.
I'm just wondering, is this available to all, would be available to all employees
Available to all full-time employees defined
at the 30th?
within a minimum of 30 hours per week, and eligibility covered or carrying the base life insurance. It's a supplemental life insurance, so to qualify you must carry the current base life insurance.
Ms. Austin.
Now, being that you're expanding coverage, even though it's not costing us anything, are they looking into giving us a discount, a further discount than what they're already?
On the rates? No, because it is it's a set pool, and the employee paid rate for the supplemental insurance company, the actuarials have calculated whatever the risk is to Sun Life Insurance. And it does not equate to or qualify for a discount on our base rate.
Have there been any barriers in the past as to why we couldn't offer this type of a program, or is this a new phenomenon?
It's not a new phenomenon. I don't think that there was much attention ever given to it. It was something that I thought I had some experience with, and I thought that, you know, the comparable shopping, you go out and try to purchase a $200,000 no question asked policy. It's very hard to get. It's here because of the economies of scale, it's because of the current base coverage that we can afford our qualifying employees supplemental life insurance at some rather competitive, excellent rates.
Thank you. Mr. Jones.
Is there a wraparound for board members?
You put in 30 hours of work?
Yeah.
Yes, you do.
You're giving us your life?
Any further questions?
Except that I commend Elio because, you know, we don't have many opportunities to do things like this. You know, these are negotiations, and it's just being a responsible employee, and I think it's something that I support wholeheartedly.
Are we using